Morbid Facts, Part 100. In 1999, the Davises had to give up their pet chimpanzee Mo after it bit off the finger of a woman who was visiting their California home. He was placed in a monkey sanctuary called Animal Haven Ranch. On Mo's 39th birthday, the couple visited him with a cake when two other chimps escaped from their enclosures. They approached the couple and started attacking them for not giving them cake too. Chimpanzees are twice as strong as humans and have no limits for savagery. They have also been known to attack body parts that humans need for survival. So acting accordingly, they ripped off the husband's face and bit off his fingers as well as his floppy trouser snake. The man was conscious during the whole attack and managed to survive after dozens of surgeries. Shortly afterwards, Mo escaped from the sanctuary and was never seen again. Morbid Facts, Part 25. In 1880, the Queen of Thailand's boat capsized on the way to her palace. Despite many witnesses, nobody dared to save the drowning queen and her daughter. This was because touching the queen under any circumstances was a crime punishable by death. The lowest form of accommodation in Victorian England was a place where you could dangle on a rope overnight for the price of a penny. For centuries, the feet of Chinese women were tightly bound from a young age as part of a traditional custom, causing the breaking and bending of the bones of the toe. This resulted in extremely disfigured feet that resembled the hooves of animals. Morbid Facts, Part 24. In 1978, Charlie Chaplin's body was stolen and held for ransom, but his widow refused to pay ransom demands of 400,000 euros because she said Charlie would have thought it to be ridiculous. His body was found in a cornfield 11 weeks later, and the two suspects were apprehended. A woman in Florida once spent 6 straight years sitting on a couch. She died during a surgery that attempted to remove her skin that was grafted into the fabric. Frank Hayes was a jockey who suffered a fatal heart attack and died in the middle of a horse race in 1923. His body, however, remained on the saddle throughout the race, as his horse Sweet Kiss crossed the finish line ahead of the rest, thus winning the race. This was the first time Hayes had ever won a race, and the last. Morbid Facts, Part 22. A South African man named Martin Pistorius lived through an actual nightmare. When he was 12 years old, Martin got sick and fell into a coma where he remained in a vegetative state for 12 years. Or at least, doctors thought it was a vegetative state. Because 2 years into the coma, Martin regained consciousness, but was unable to show any sign of it. So he was trapped in a lifeless state for an entire decade while being fully aware of everything going on around him. He said one of the worst parts was when the daycare lady would sit him in front of children and baby TV shows all day long. On multiple occasions, he also heard his mother say, "I hope you die." Today, Martin can speak through a computer and move with a wheelchair, as his awareness has fully returned. Morbid Facts, Part 20. An Indian farmer named Sanju Bhagat lived for 36 years looking like he was pregnant. But one day he was rushed to the hospital because he was having trouble breathing. Doctors initially assumed that a tumor was growing inside his abdomen, but upon operating, they saw something that they had never seen before. They realized that he must have absorbed his twin in the womb and had been carrying it around for 36 years. This is an extremely rare condition called fetus in fetu, where one twin has been absorbed but continues to leach on the host's blood supply and nutrition. The fetus had grown teeth, hair, limbs, and even genitalia. The parasitic twin was eventually removed and Sanju made a full recovery. Morbid Facts, Part 19. After an accident at the Tokemura nuclear plant in 1999, nuclear technician Hisashi Ouchi received a fatal dose of radiation. The dose was believed to be nearly equivalent to the energy produced at the hypocenter of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. Ouchi's exposure to the radiation was so severe that his chromosomes were basically melted and his white blood cell count plummeted to near zero. Unfortunately for Ouchi, doctors saw this as an opportunity to see how long they could keep him alive. They gave him revolutionary cancer treatment, as well as many skin grafts and blood transfusions. On the 59th day, he suffered 3 heart attacks in under an hour. The treatment went on and on for 83 days total, until Ouchi finally died from organ failure. Morbid Facts, Part 18. Two bakery workers died in agony after being sent into a giant bagel oven to carry out repairs. The repair was a delicate procedure that involved crawling through a tight 75-foot-long conveyor belt that slowly cooks bagels. The machine should have been left to cool for 12 hours, but turned back on after only 2. Within 5 minutes, the men were relaying terrifying messages over their walkie-talkies, saying the oven's core was way too hot. But there was no way of reversing the conveyor belt, and they were trapped on its journey through the oven. 44-year-old Ian Erickson managed to crawl out the other end, but died on the factory floor in front of horrified workmates. 47-year-old David Mays collapsed inside and was caught in the machinery. He died from 80% burns and multiple broken bones. Morbid Facts, Part 16. A Texas farmer found this astronaut helmet in his field following the Columbia disaster that killed 7 space shuttle crew members in 2003. Along with pieces of the shuttle and equipment, searchers in the debris field also found human body parts, including arms, feet, a torso, and a heart. This 3-person coffin was made for a Colorado couple whose baby died in the 1930s. Stricken by grief, they planned on committing suicide and being buried together in a single coffin. The coffin went unused when they thankfully decided not to go through with it. Today it can be seen in the National Museum of Funeral History. Apparently that's a real museum in Texas. Morbid Facts, Part 15. There are currently hundreds of deceased people in the US whose bodies are frozen in liquid nitrogen, including baseball legend Ted Williams. The hope is that future technology will be able to revive them one day. While this could possibly work, cryogenic freezing has proven to be a terribly risky operation. In one instance, the Cryonics Society of California ran out of money and couldn't keep their customers frozen, so the bodies began to thaw and decompose. Some of the bodies even went missing, and to this day, their families still don't know what happened to them. Morbid Facts, Part 13. This girl's jaw was hanging on by a centimeter of skin after a horrific horse riding accident. The injuries sustained by Emily Eccles were the worst her surgeon had seen outside of a war zone. But reconstructive surgeon Ricardo Muhammad Ali was able to rebuild her face during a 6-hour operation. The photo on the right is her back in school just 1 month after the accident. This was a white hearse used for children's funerals back in the 1930s. A boy genius named Brendan Bremer was able to read at 18 months, graduated high school at age 10, and composed music. He tragically shot himself at age 14 to donate his organs to those in need. Morbid Facts, Part 12. At age 25, a woman named Blanche Monnier had her heart set on marrying a lawyer that her mother wasn't too fond of. When she disappeared one day, most assumed that she had simply run off with him. But 25 years later, someone sent local authorities an anonymous letter saying her mother was holding her hostage. When they arrived at the home, they found Blanche bound and starving in the attic. Dying is forbidden in the town of Longyearbyen, Norway, or at least, you won't be buried there. The town's only cemetery closed over 70 years ago because it's so cold that the bodies buried there previously never decomposed. The problem is that some corpses still carry traces of the Spanish flu virus that killed up to 50 million people worldwide around 100 years ago. Morbid Facts, Part 9. Jake Thompson was home alone when he had both of his arms ripped off in a farming accident. However, he still managed to get up and dial 911 with a pencil in his mouth. He miraculously survived and both of his arms were reattached. For centuries, there was a paint pigment called mummy brown that was made out of the ground-up remains of ancient Egyptian mummies. The color was manufactured until 1964, when the supply of ancient mummies was finally expended. This is a photo of 2 engineers embracing for one final hug while standing on top of a wind turbine engulfed in flames. One of the men jumped to escape the fire, while the other one was burned alive while attempting to reach the staircase. Morbid Facts, Part 9. Jake Thompson was home alone when he had both of his arms ripped off in a farming accident. However, he still managed to get up and dial 911 with a pencil in his mouth. He miraculously survived and both of his arms were reattached. For centuries, there was a paint pigment called mummy brown that was made out of the ground-up remains of ancient Egyptian mummies. The color was manufactured until 1964, when the supply of ancient mummies was finally expended. This is a photo of two engineers embracing for one final hug while standing on top of a wind turbine engulfed in flames. One of the men jumped to escape the fire while the other one was burned alive while attempting to reach the staircase. Morbid Facts, Part 9. Jake Thompson was home alone when he had both of his arms ripped off in a farming accident. However, he still managed to get up and dial 911 with a pencil in his mouth. He miraculously survived and both of his arms were reattached. For centuries, there was a paint pigment called mummy brown that was made out of the ground-up remains of ancient Egyptian mummies. The color was manufactured until 1964, when the supply of ancient mummies was finally expended. This is a photo of two engineers embracing for one final hug while standing on top of a wind turbine engulfed in flames. One of the men jumped to escape the fire while the other one was burned alive while attempting to reach the staircase. Morbid Facts, Part 6. Young filmmaker Lee Halpin was filming a documentary about the hardships of being homeless by living as one. But he was found dead in the streets only 3 days into filming. The nuclear blast in Hiroshima was so powerful that some people were vaporized instantly, leaving only shadow imprints of their final moments. In the 1970s, a man who committed suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge left a suicide note saying, "I'm going to walk to the bridge. If just one person smiles at me along the way, I won't jump." Morbid Facts, Part 6. Young filmmaker Lee Halpin was filming a documentary about the hardships of being homeless by living as one. But he was found dead in the streets only 3 days into filming. The nuclear blast in Hiroshima was so powerful that some people were vaporized instantly, leaving only shadow imprints of their final moments. In the 1970s, a man who committed suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge left a suicide note saying, "I'm going to walk to the bridge. If just one person smiles at me along the way, I won't jump." Morbid Facts, Part 5. After being diagnosed with polio at age 3, Diane Odell spent nearly 60 years encased in a 750-pound iron lung. She only died when a power outage shut down the machine that had been keeping her alive for decades. Do you know why you wake up right before you're about to die in a dream? It's because your brain doesn't know what it's actually like to experience death. In 1901, Madame Bobbin from England fell ill late into her pregnancy and was pronounced dead. But a few days later, one of the nurses was tormented by the idea that she may have been buried alive. After Madame Bobbin's father was alerted of this, he demanded that the grave be dug up immediately. When the coffin was open, he was horrified to find the corpse of a baby with an uncut umbilical cord laying between his now dead daughter's legs. Morbid Facts, Part 4. In 1985, a 13-year-old Colombian girl was trapped up to her waist in volcanic mud flow. She was mostly alert and was interviewed, but rescuers couldn't find a way to save her. Knowing she would certainly die, volunteers did their best to comfort her. She died after 60 hours, and her image became iconic. In 2008, a Brazilian priest strapped 1,000 balloons onto a lawn chair and rode it into the sky as part of a fundraiser. He was able to reach an altitude of 20,000 feet before losing contact with authorities. Over a month later, the lower half of his body was found floating near an oil rig. Morbid Facts, Part 99. A few days before he was assassinated, President Lincoln told several people about a dream he had. In the dream, Lincoln saw a soldier standing beside a casket, and he could also hear people weeping. Still dreaming, Lincoln asked the soldier, "Who's dead in the White House?" The soldier turned to him slowly and replied, "The president." In the late 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she had met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. When she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS."